Please note that the proceedings of this meeting are at the moment being recorded and streamed live on YouTube. Links are available on our agendas online. You'll be able to pick that up on the Plymouth City Council YouTube channel. Before we proceed with the nominations for Chair and Vice Chair and in line with the panel's procedures, I'd like to bring your attention to some housekeeping matters. If you wish to speak during the meeting, I'd ask that you raise your hand and wait for the Chair to invite you to speak. In terms of voting, we will be voting by show of hands this morning. We will ask if the panel is in favour, against or abstain, at which point you should raise your hand accordingly. I will announce the results of each vote, should we have any, to ensure clarity. Please hold your hand up until I indicate that you can lower them, so I have time to count your vote, please. We might take a 15-minute break, but I'll leave that to our incoming chair to determine. Should there be a fire alarm sounding today, you will need to exit the building the way you came in, so down the stairs, through the double doors, across the car park where we will congregate. There is no drills today, so if the fire alarm does sound, it is for real. Sorry. Yes.
That's the best. All right. Okay.
So there is a terrible echo up here. Yeah, it's not easy to hear you.
All right, just one moment. Thank you, members. I've increased the volume of the system, so hopefully you'll be able to hear a little bit more clearly. Councillors, I'll now move on to item 1. Could I seek some nominations for the chair, please? Councillor Mrs. Pengelly. Nomination, Councillor Roger Crode. Is there a seconder?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Guest. Could I take a show of hands, please? Those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. Councillor Crode.
Thank you, members. Now I will ask for nominations for Vice Chair, please. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Kevin Towell, please.
Kevin Towell, okay. Have I second?
I'm happy to second that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other nominations?
Yes, please, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Allah, please.
Okay. Where do we go now? Any further nominations? Do I have a second now for Councillor Atiyah? You don't have a second at the moment.
At least we tried, Roger.
Sorry, I don't see any hands. Thank you. So the nomination is for Councillor Kevin Towell to take the Vice Chair. I have a proposal. I have a seconder. All in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That is unanimous.
Not unanimous.
Not unanimous. Right, okay.
We'll take it as is, but Councillor Dewhurst did not vote, so.
Oh, right,
not voted
okay.
for it, so we'll need to.
I abstain, Chair.
Abstaining, right, nearly unanimous then. So Kevin's not here today. What I would like, if it's possible, to have a stand-in vice chair. Vivian Pangelli, would you take the vice chair for just for today? Thank you very much.
Chairman, whilst Councillor Pangelli is going to a seat, can I just say what a waste of paper these agenda packs are? The majority of members now have laptops, and I think unless you specifically request agenda papers, I don't think we should be printing them. They're not environmentally friendly. They don't help with sustainability. They don't help with budgets. So I would like it to be considered that no agenda packs are printed in future.
Thank you, Nikki. I know Jake has asked. Okay. I know Jake has asked if anyone doesn't want the paper copies. So, Ross, you've got.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Hopwood, appreciate your comments. Certainly, it's certainly the case here in Plymouth that we're trying to move as much to digital as possible away from paper copies. Of course, it's a little bit more difficult when we are dealing right across the Devon and Cornwall area, but what I can say is we're more than happy to provide you with electronic summons, and we're happy to provide all members with electronic summons. Should members then wish to have paper copies of agendas following receipt of that summons, we're more than happy to provide those.
Thank you, that's more than sensible.
Thank you. Item 3 then, apologies. Ross.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Knowles, Councillor Biederman, Councillor Alvey, Councillor Hackett, Councillor Wright, Councillor Roger. Councillor Alvey has been substituted by Councillor Guest. Councillor Towell has also given apologies and is substituted by Councillor Channon. We've also received apologies from Sharon Minty, our independent member from Cornwall. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4 then, minutes of the last meeting. I just want to see whether they're an accurate record of the meeting held on the 28th of January. I wasn't here at the time. I'll go through these page by page. Page 1. Yeah, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chairman. Congratulations, by the way, on being reappointed. Just a spelling mistake on my name on page 1.
We'll note that correction, Chair. Obviously, the minutes are for the approval by the committee. Thank you.
So, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, 8, 9, and 10. So, is it the panel's view that I sign these off as a accurate record of the meeting of the 28th of January?
Agreed.
Agreed? Good, thank you very much. So I move to item 5, which is declarations of interest. Please indicate if you have any declarations of interest in respect of the items on the agenda today? No, thank you very much. Public questions? We have a question from a Mr. Alan Grant. I hope you can hear me. Are you able to read your question out now, please? Do you want to read your question?
Yes, if you like.
Please carry on.
This is my question to the panel?
Yes.
Right, okay. Does the Devon and Cornwall Crime Panel believe that with over 2,500 complaints against police officers in the year 2021 and 2022, with only one ending up in a disciplinary hearing, it is a satisfactory state of affairs? Would they agree that it indicates an indictment of the complaint process and reflects a complete lack of priority on the part of the police, an indifference to the stated concerns of the public, and is part of a system to discourage complaints and cover up the scale? Is an average of 18 months between a complaint being received and a disciplinary hearing taking place acceptable? Members of the panel are asked to read the exposure by the Herald on the 19th of March. All facts quoted came from the FOI office of Devon and Cornwall Police. And the reference is that one. That's the Herald of the 19th of March, which I presume most of you read anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Commissioner.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your question, Mr. Grant. I think it's really helpful to highlight some challenges that get put into the public domain around policing. And we particularly are interested in how police complaints are handled, as I have a specific role in the appeals process for complaints. What I will say is in the 2 years, 2021 and 2022, Devon and Cornwall Police recorded a total number of 2,940 complaints against officers, staff and special constables. The majority of these were about general levels of service, not about misconduct. And wherever possible, these are dealt with the misconduct as quickly as possible. And particularly the service delivery complaints, they're usually dealt with very quickly with service recovery officers that we have that actually speak to those complainants. The threshold for misconduct is very, very specific. It's set out in statutory guidance as behaviour that is so serious that it justifies disciplinary proceedings or behaviour that is of a criminal matter. It's a good thing that we see relatively few of these cases in Devon and Cornwall, and I am assured that when they do arise, they are taken very seriously. In these 2 years, the force recorded 238 cases out of those 2,940 that were related to misconduct. Of those, 167 have been concluded and 71 are still under investigation. Of those concluded, 25 proceeded to disciplinary proceedings, 18 of which were misconduct hearings, which resulted in 7 dismissals. So in reality, only 8% of all complaints were about misconduct. And 15% of those concluded were found to have cases to answer in formal proceedings, and nearly half of all those cases taken to misconduct hearings resulted in dismissal. So it gives you a picture that the majority of the complaints that comes into policing is about the levels of service that they've received as opposed to the misconduct of a police officer. But when we do identify the misconduct arrangements that being needing to go through disciplinary proceedings, 50% of those are upheld, around 50%. So that might give you some assurance that those that do come to light are taken seriously, and actually 50% result in serious dismissal in this case. So I think that might help you with the bigger picture of what's happening with complaints to policing.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. I think we'll provide a written report to you, Mr. Grant.
One was the number of people that actually got into a disciplinary hearing, and you suggest the figures I received indicated only one out of the 2,500. There's two aspects to this. There's the public complaints, and no one suggests that there was 2,500 members of the public, because some of those complaints were multiple, and there were individuals, or some police officers might accumulate a number of complaints against them personally. But the evidence from FOI said that only one person progressed into a disciplinary hearing, but you seem to be suggesting that there were more than that, and that's I can only quote you the information your office gave me. And secondly, the second part of my question was why, with that going on, the average, and it's only the average, there'll be lesser and more, the average time for investigating a complaint was 1.5 years. And that is also of concern to me, particularly in view of the Home Office standard of 1 year, and where you have to make special reports if you exceed beyond that. And that's average. So I'm a bit lost in terms of the information I've been given, which I raised my complaints about, and your response today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Grant. There is no debate at the moment, and I'm sure the Commissioner has taken your views in hand, and we will provide a written response to you. Do you wish to say anything more, Commissioner, at all? No? Don't need to? No. Thank you very much. I'd just like to add the fact that most of your response is an operational matter, and the Commissioner doesn't deal with operational matters. It's the Chief Constable that deals with operational matters. If you've got any further questions, then please put them in writing and come back to us. Thank you very much. So let's move on then to item 7, which is the Commissioner's update report. Which is page 1 to 18 in your pack, members. Commissioner.
Thank you, Chairman. It is frustrating for members of the public because they don't quite understand the process of the panel, and it's unfortunate that it isn't about having a debate and clarity right now on that. So it's really sad because we very rarely get a public question, don't we, Chairman? So it always feels a bit awkward when we can't have a conversation about it fully, but we need to just maybe help people access my office before they come to a public question, so they can be really clear exactly what's going to happen.
Well, I'm sure he probably won't let it drop anyway. So if we provide a written response to him, he'll no doubt come back to that. And Fran has gone to speak to him now. So.
I've just asked my Chief Executive to hand him a written response, so he's got it before he goes.
Great, thanks very much.
Just in terms of the Commissioner's update report, obviously we've got some big news on the horizon, in the sense that our Chief Constable that we've known for many years, and you will have met many times, is retiring this year. He's currently on leave, and we have an acting Chief Constable in position while he is away. He will be back in August for a short period of time, and I am in the process right now of recruiting a new Chief Constable, of which panel members will be part of that process in me proposing who I will be appointing, and you will be able to scrutinise the process and my decision on that. But I would just like to say a few things about Mr. Sean Sawyer. He's been the Chief Constable I've known in the 6 years that I've been Commissioner, which is rare. It's rare to have a Chief Constable for so long, only because they tend to be at the end of their life normally and ready to leave after a few years. And it's been an actual pleasure to be able to have stable leadership in Devon and Cornwall Police over this time. He has overseen some quite major things. I thought it would be quite helpful to remind panel. Unfortunately, he obviously is not here today, but I'm hoping that there will be an opportunity for panel to see him before he goes in the near future. But his key achievements, I think, and challenges that he's overseen since he's been here are just incredible, in terms of, obviously, like all chiefs, he's overseen austerity, going into working out how to do things for less, and then we created the alliance with Dorset Police. As a result, we're probably one of the most functioning alliances in the country. I know when we looked at the merger business case members, the feasibility of doing that with Dorset, and your scrutiny was extremely helpful. And obviously we chose not to go ahead with that merger, but he's the first Chief Constable, along with Dorset Chief Constable, to really push and suggest that a merger might be an option. So he's tried to see different ways of working. Obviously, we've had one of the biggest events that we've hosted in Devon and Cornwall with G7 only last year, and 5,000 police officers from around the country really well inducted into the Devon and Cornwall way when they arrived at headquarters, and helped police a smooth G7 summit. And the bit that was smooth about that is that we didn't have protests that embarrassed us as Devon and Cornwall, and we had really good tactics and techniques to make sure that our community felt safe during that time. We've also had, though, and I will say this for the Chief Constable, something no one wants to ever be there to oversee, with our mass shooting in Keyham last year. And that will now be a legacy challenge for Devon and Cornwall. It's something we're never going to forget, and I know that the Chief Constable will be involved in some years, I'm sure, in relation to the whole inquiry. We've got the coroners in January next year, so there are things that he may well still be involved in as he retires. So I think in terms of saying goodbye to Sean, I thought it was really useful to just mention a couple of things that, and I know that you have always appreciated him attending panel, particularly at budget time, to explain why he needs the resources he needs and to give you assurance that it's going where you would expect it to go. So sad times that we move on, but an opportunity, and I can't wait to, we've had some applications in for the new Chief Constable position, and we will be bringing the final appointee to you as part of that process.
Sure. Thanks very much for that, Commissioner. Taking me back, I think I'm possibly the only panel member that actually oversaw the appointment of the Chief Constable at the time. Chris may have been here. Chris is always here from time to time, like a bad penny, I think. We're really sorry, but we'll say a few words at the back end of the meeting, I think, to laud the Chief Constable. Thank you. Continue, please, Commissioner.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to point out just a couple of bits in the Commissioner's update couple, more than a couple, it's a few. But you'll probably feel a bit of a drugs theme today in the agenda, drugs and sort of road safety, just because we're trying to really focus in on the priority around that. So I do want to talk about Op Medusa in particularly, where we've had Merseyside police come down with their confidence and capabilities to really drive drugs out of the southwest. And we had, I'm looking at Councillor Atia Allah, they've been to Torquay, they've been to Plymouth, they've been to Teignmouth, and we're having them back again soon. So we're really pleased that we're able to bring those corporate resources nationally to bear down in Devon and Cornwall. And I know that I've already got police and crime commissioners a little bit envious that we've been able to get them here a few times, but they're absolutely specialist in what they do. Been out with them, they did 40 arrests on the visit that they did to Torquay. And I think for us in particular, I can't tell you, it's actually quite boring watching and trying to catch drug dealers. You have to watch them for a long time, you have to follow them around. So hopefully they get the satisfaction with actually taking them off the streets and making sure that those drugs are removed from circulation. But really powerful having Merseyside Police down. And this is funded by the Home Office to tackle the county lines issues that we have, where the source is coming from Liverpool and the county line is bringing it down into Devon and Cornwall. There's also a similar scheme in the Midlands and in the Met, and again we'll probably be trying to pull some of those resources on those county lines to really help get it out of Devon and Cornwall. But we're very proud of working closely with them, and I'm sure you saw some of the media on it too. Just next, in terms of prisoners building homes, initiative. We're still, and I really would appreciate panel's influence in your local authority on this. We have had quite a few sites identified, but fundamentally this is a major strategic project for the Southwest and potentially nationally. It's helping the people who are most far from work, we want to reduce reoffending when they come back out from prison. We want to skill them up with the ability to have a job. And building these modular homes through the prison is an absolutely, and they're eco-friendly, they are cheap and affordable to buy, and we are looking for sites to be able to have local authorities want to build them, and you can move them even if after a while you've got planning permission for a proper development on that site, you can move them at your will. So there is a real flexibility in this scheme, and I'm just sort of asking, why don't you go and ask back at your local authority what sites have been identified? Because while at the moment the workshop is in Gloucestershire, they can do orders for anywhere, and my aim and our ambition is to have one of these workshops at every prison in the southwest. So this is actually something that is a sustainable option for trying to help with the housing lists and the homeless problem, but actually help those individuals perform and contribute positively as they leave prison. So just wanted to flag that one in particular. Also, the Commissioner's Community Grant Scheme, as I work through Devon Community Foundation and Cornwall Community Foundation, at the moment I'm launching one for Cornwall to flag to members in particular there. You may want to have a look at whether there's some people you could push in that direction. We're particularly keen again to look at how we can reduce drugs harm, how we can educate young people, reach out to younger people in that particular scheme. So please push forward any ideas you've got with that, and there'll be a Devon one coming soon. Finally, I think the other big one I really just want to flag is the opening of police front desks. On your agenda in page 11, it's actually got a list for the next few years, but I'm just going to put a little prerequisite down now, a little marker, to say the ones from November are definite, but the ones beyond that are still flexible. So this is both for members' awareness in case you have a front desk office that you'd like opened where you are, or you need to make sure that I'm opening those ones on that list. What I'm saying is I haven't prioritised the list beyond this year at the moment, so just to flag that. But really, really delighted that we're going to be able to do that, and I think this is huge, particularly in light of the performance on 101 that you, I'm sure, will scrutinise me on shortly. But we've got to make it more accessible for people to be able to access policing simply, especially when they're distressed, especially when they don't know what to do or where to go, and to look and be seen to be on the side of the community. We want policing to be seen to be on the side of the community, and by having a front desk open, it's saying we care. That's fundamentally where I'm trying to go with the reopening of front desks. It's tricky, it's not cheap, there are a few challenges, but they will be open. All the new ones that I would look to open will be open 10 till 3, Monday to Friday. So while that's not 7 days a week, that is the busiest times on the phones, so it's actually to assist and support our communities. And just to let you know, because I think members may not be aware, any police station, open or closed, that has a blue phone outside of it, you will get prioritised answered if you use that blue phone. So if you do get frustrations in the community about accessing 101 and they have a closed police office, if they use the blue phone, it will get triaged quickly from outside the police station. So do let your communities know that as well. In terms of that, I will just highlight the survey that we're doing nationally on 101 and 999. So this is a national survey. It's a bit about what are people's experiences of using 101 and 999, and we're trying to see if we can compare, because we all have the challenge with the 101 phone line. We are all struggling with it. The 999 league tables were published in May this year, showing who's particularly fast or slower at answering 999. And we will have 101 league tables come soon, and I'm sure panel will be delighted to hear that. We're expecting that it was towards the end of this year, but it's likely to be next year now that will be published. But again, it will give you some comparators as to how Devon and Cornwall is performing compared to others. And I think you'll probably welcome that. But if you could promote the survey while it's still open, we need as many people's experiences, good or bad, of using the 101 and 999 system. So I just wanted to flag that with you. One around unauthorised encampments and the police crime courts and sentencing bill. I know members are particularly keen to explore the use of the powers around unauthorised encampments. I would like to ask the chairman in particular and the administrator of this meeting in Ross is that you've got it on your forward plan later on in the agenda, but we should be calling it unauthorised encampments, not focusing it particularly on travellers, because an unauthorised encampment is now just one vehicle. It's not multiple vehicles that's come through in the legislation. So let's just make sure we're using the right language when we're talking about this subject. But I know you would really like to scrutinise how that legislation may be working in Devon and Cornwall. So I won't talk in detail about that, but we can have that as a specific agenda item. And then finally, just again for members' influence, because, you know, in terms of what your local authority may be doing, the Shared Prosperity Fund in the levelling up arrangements is the only fund that has an element around crime or community safety. I would really appreciate if you would go and ask your local authorities how much they're putting towards that element in the Shared Prosperity Fund rather than others. So I'd really just wanted to highlight that to you, that that is the only opportunity that I've got to be able to help do crime reduction in your communities with this extra funding in particular. So again, just if you can find out what your local authority is doing and if you think it's enough or not, just to see what's going on there. But other than that, I'll leave it there, Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think members, especially the new members, should be aware of the fact we've looked at 101 many times. I'm not sure if it's getting better. It's certainly better than when we first started it, sort of several years ago. But so I would urge you to get amongst your constituents and get them to fill in the survey. I'm interested really in people's views on the 101. It's the direct contact with the police, which is really important. You don't see them on the streets anymore, so you need to get 101 as efficient as possible. Members, you've had the update from the Commissioner. Are there any questions? Nikki?
Thank you. I'm really pleased to hear about the opening of some of the rural, especially rural police stations. That's a really positive move forward, and your wording around communities and somehow having a presence within a community with a police station. Can I ask you, there are a lot of rural communities within Devon and Cornwall that are nowhere near a police station, even if you were to reopen one that was near to them, if that makes sense. Have you ever considered, or would you consider in the future, pop-up rural police stations? Is that something you've got in mind for the future?
Thank you, Councillor Hopwood. Just in terms of, I'd be really keen for that to happen. My only worry, if I'm frank, is the consistency and reliability of doing that. So they will often do a random mobile police station or a pop-up event where they might even go to some of the country fairs and the livestock markets and things like that. But it's inconsistent and unreliable. And that's the biggest challenge with doing that. If it's manned by police officers, staffed by police officers, it will never be reliable. So I'll be interested in a few communities that might want something like that, and we can explore it. And I know in like Seaton and things like that, the local police officers used to go out on the library van and go around with the mobile library, but it's inconsistent and unreliable. And I don't want to create an expectation that then is not met.
Chairman, if I can come back, thank you for that. In the ward that I represent, and also within the Bickley and Cornwood ward and Woolwell that I represent, we are staffed by Ivybridge Police Station. So I would love a unreliable manned pop-up shop whenever. Thank you.
More than happy to work with the member specifically for Woolwell, as she's raised it a number of times before about feeling isolated because of the way it's policed from Woolwell. More than happy to see what we can work with the local officers on that.
with Nikki around, no one will be isolated. I have a number of panel members wishing to ask a question. Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. So firstly, I'd like to commend the Commissioner on the breadth of what has been going on. You really have been busy, which is to be commended. I'd also like to add my view to my voice to the front desks. It was great to see you outside Newton Abbot Station. That's something that we have long campaigned for locally, to get a major police station reopened. It sort of sits there like the grey Lubyanka at the moment, and it would be great to have a welcoming front door again. So that is really good. With regards to the last comment about police officers out in the rural communities, I'd obviously like to commend my local community PCs. They run really brilliant and regular PAC meetings in their communities, and these are really welcomed by the community. Not always quite as much as in the sense that we don't often get many turn up. It depends on the type of meeting that they have, but they are really, really appreciated. And moving on from that, and with regards to the piece about the maritime PSCO, I'd like to commend one of my county division's local community officers, PC Clark Orchard, who is doing an incredible job in terms of getting all maritime equipment, boats and everything else tagged and marked for security, and also all agricultural equipment. So every farm, everywhere, every isolated house, everything that can be half-inched is being marked. Similarly, with boats and the like, and I just think that is an absolutely amazing thing that is happening quietly but effectively. And then just finally, Speedwatch. I didn't get along to the event, but I do know from our local Speedwatch administrators how good the event was, and it was really good to see our main administrator get a commendation from you. So thank you very much. That's all. Thank you, Roger.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Councillor Dewhurst. You've probably just lauded, really, the councillor advocate scheme that I run out of the office to support councillors' better connection with local policing. So if you're not a member of the councillor advocate scheme, and panel members are more than welcome to be, it does give you more direct access to your local policing teams, of which, actually, Councillor Hopwood, you could suggest that they come and do those little surgeries with you. But it is a really good scheme, and Newton Abbot area has particularly been working well. You do work as a team, as elected councillors, and the local policing team feel the pressure of the need to do things because of that relationship. They're very busy. When they have to decide what's important, councillors can sometimes help them understand what's important, and I think that's why that relationship is so good. I also just want to flag that the police inquiry officer jobs for all these stations we're opening, so Newton Abbot included, they're advertised at the moment, so there are some local jobs for people if they wanted to apply. That would be really excellent. And finally, Speedwatch. It's your big thing, Councillor Dewhurst. You're such a champion for road safety, and the seminars were fantastic. It's the first time we've really recognised community Speedwatch schemes for the amount of hours that they put in for making our roads safer. And I think for us in particular, through the Vision Zero partnership, which some of you will be directly involved in and some indirectly, we've been able to fund extra administrators for the community Speedwatch scheme. We now have 4 people working in helping and supporting community Speedwatch to work. We only used to have 1. So you can see the dramatic step change that's starting to happen in there. So thank you for those comments. It's really good to hear. And I note my chief exec has noted the name of the officer down as well, as I think that's important that we thank him.
PC Orchard.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Tyler.
Thank you, Chair. Just look at the hate crime statistics. Very disappointing indeed that there has been a 41% increase in Devon and Cornwall. But then again, when you look at the national trend, it's up 12% to 120,000 in the UK. Do you have a plan going forward to tackle this? Because it seems like hate crime at the moment is out of control. You know, I'm still, as you know, with the work that I do in Torbay, I'm still getting inundated. How are you going to be tackling that in the next 12 months? That's my first question.
Pardon? Yeah, we are still on the Commissioner's update. Perhaps that could come in a little bit later.
Okay, I'll come back later. Thank you.
Yeah. Did you have a second question?
I did, and it was in regards to opening a police front desk in Paignton. And I know me and you have discussed that several times. Where are you with that?
So as you'll see, even on the list that's not agreed in the next couple of years, Paignton is not there. The one thing I have done, though, is put the funding in to open Torquay Police Station on a Saturday. So there's a 6-day-a-week, and they don't close for lunch like they used to. So you've got a 6-day-a-week coverage, 8 till 6 in Torquay. We actually have some real estate challenges in Paignton for policing. Since that police station that was sold off many, many years ago, they're in the library, and they've outgrown it, but we can't find anywhere better. The chief executive of my office has personally walked around Paignton and spoken with a range of people about what facilities might be available, and there is none. So that is part of our challenge. We did used to have something in the library as a part front desk before, but we haven't rethought it. So that is something that we could explore over the next few years, because we haven't got that final list of what's actually going to open in the next few years. So be more than happy to have that conversation with you further.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Penberthy. Chris.
Thank you. I would just want to talk about section 1.8, which is violence against women and girls, which should probably, as it refers to the Commission, be male violence against women and girls rather than violence against women and girls as a header. At the last meeting of the panel, when the precept was agreed, that was with a specific recommendation around you adopting anything within your control. That isn't mentioned at all in your report. It just says you're working with Safer Plymouth. Please, can you, in your next report, actually detail what you are doing around the recommendation that linked to your budget precept, specifically around the outcomings of the Commission? Because I think it's important that if the panel says that a precept is subject to something, that you, in your report, show what that subject to means in writing rather than in a verbal response. So it's a request for your next report to actually have full detail of that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Sorry, at the back, sorry. Councillor Guest, sorry.
Yeah, it's Peter Guest, yeah, I'm a newbie. It's going to be a nice question, Commissioner, because I'm going to tap you up for some money. Regarding your new fund that you just mentioned, I was under the impression that it was aimed at reducing ASB in general, but you mentioned specifically it was to reduce drug use. Was that?
Sorry, Councillor Guest, I couldn't quite catch your question.
Your new grant fund that you mentioned that was aimed at, you said today, is aimed at reducing drug use. I think when I read it, I understood it was to reduce ASB in general. It is. Good. Excellent. I'd really welcome a conversation outside of here with one of your officers then, because I've got a cunning plan. And well, that was it, basically. I just wanted to clarify that point. Thank you. Short and sweet.
For the record, Chairman, it's antisocial drug use and all those sorts of, so it is the broader antisocial behaviour around drugs as well.
Thank you. Councillor Chopak?
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner, for a very good report. I'm going to be slightly cheeky about my second part of my question, but the first part is around good old front offices again. I know it's been mentioned, and you have actually answered one of the questions already around where the jobs are being advertised and where the inquiry offices are coming from. I was just going to ask, and I'm sure I'm probably not necessarily speaking for Bude. I notice obviously some of the offices that you're suggesting opening are obviously seaside towns. And it's sort of slightly disappointing that the Bude office isn't going to be opening till November when our season is effectively already finished and our antisocial behaviour issues are obviously ramping up now. I was wondering if you like, if some of these opening dates could be brought forward from November, considering your recruiting now. And also obviously from a point of view of recruitment, I mean, are you looking, I mean, having not seen the job advert, are you looking for sort of ex-police officers? Can they be civilian voluntary type people? I mean, is there a way, and I can only talk for Bude because I don't know about the circumstances of the others, whether we could get it open earlier? That was sort of my first question. And then the second question, which isn't in your update, but I'm sort of being slightly cheeky because you mentioned it in the conversation you were having about our Chief Constable who was retiring about G7. And it's a question that might not come up within this, but obviously you mentioned about 5,000 officers coming to Devon and Cornwall. I've sort of heard on the grapevine that we're potentially having to send officers from Devon and Cornwall, say for the Commonwealth Games. So if you like, I'm worried about the impact on resourcing here when again we're coming through up to our summer season. You know, we have huge issues around antisocial behaviour, drug use and all that, and yet we're sort of having to ship officers out for other events, and I was just wondering what the impact on our resources is going forward. So as I say, I'm not sure if that's within your update, so I'm being slightly cheeky. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry to shake my head about getting them open for the summer. The only challenge is there are some physical issues that need to be dealt with in the front desk, making sure the IT equipment works, because they have been closed. Some actually need a wall knocking down. And it's the actual recruitment of the staff. So we've got 20 jobs out for the PEOs just for these few that I'm opening now. So you can imagine the cost. This is why it's challenging for us. But it will take, they need to be trained, and they also will need to pass vetting, and that takes a few months. So there is no quick answer for it, but it is open to anyone. So it's not only ex-police officers that can apply for those jobs. It is open to the public to apply for it. It'd be a great first entry job into policing. In fact, it's more well paid than a police officer starting salary. So these are really good jobs that are going to be in those communities. So yes, sorry I can't open it sooner. You did mention about volunteers. I did originally have a conversation with the Mayor of Bude about getting it open with councillors and volunteers originally, but I couldn't get, again, the systems in the policing side to make that work properly, which is why I've gone for an ordinary, traditional, paid employee who will be there available to the public for a specific amount of time to be reliable and consistent. But there is no problem, and we would love any volunteers who want to come and help in the police inquiry office or want to help support the wider community once that office is open. I'll be more than happy to have that conversation then. In terms of mutual aid, as you've talked about, officers from around the country helping out at the big events, it is obviously something that we've got a strategic policing requirement by the Home Secretary that we must help with certain public order and specifically big public order events. So we will all share and support each other when we have large events on our patch. Sometimes over the summer here, we will bring mutual aid down to help us with our influx of visitors and some of the challenges that we face. But I can assure you a little bit in that a lot of the officers that will end up going to help at mutual aid events will often do it while they're on leave and things like that. So they actually get paid twice, but they will do it while they're on leave, so it's overtime for them. So there is a bit of that, quite a lot of that goes on. So it's in addition to their day job rather than just removed as part of their day job.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Tilby.
Thank you, Chair. I can only echo my fellow members on the recommendations that have been put forward, and thank you for your very detailed and comprehensive report, as always. Councillor Dewhurst referred to neighbourhood officers. You're probably aware that Bude share theirs with Launceston. which is 1 officer plus support officer. I was just wondering if there's any way that we could increase the neighbourhood policing numbers, because it has been reported at 2 annual parish meetings by the neighbourhood team that they are lacking officers. I don't think that gives encouragement or support or to the policing in a public forum that we're saying that we haven't got the officers. You know, they keep saying we've got 20,000 officers coming to Devon and Cornwall. Sorry, not to Devon and Cornwall, but being made available. But for it to be put in a public forum, I don't think it really helps members of the public and the community generally as to what the police and the local authorities are trying to do with regards to local crime. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd be quite interested, Councillor Tilby, to go back and have a look at what the resources are for that particular sector, because if you recall at the preset meeting that we had, there's 40 extra neighbourhood officers being recruited. I've been told they are filled, those particular positions. I'd be interested to know what they've got for your particular sector, so I'd be more than happy to go away and ask to see if it's increased, decreased or stayed the same. So I'd be more than happy to go and check that out.
Yeah, I'd like you to do that, and I'd be grateful. Thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone I've missed? Any further questions, members, at all? No? Thank you very much, Commissioner. I think there was just sort of one recommendation, is that the next update will be a progress on violence against women and girls. Otherwise, members, I think the report should be noted. Thank you very much. Item 8 then, Police and Crime Plan Scorecard, that's pages 19 to 38 in your bundle, members. So back to you, Commissioner, I think.
I was just going to suggest, Chairman, just in the interest of time, because I believe you might have quite a few questions on this report, would you like to just go straight to questions? Does that help? I'm happy to do a summary, but I'm just thinking more time to do the scrutiny on the questions might be an option. Because you know me, I can talk for 10 minutes on the performance report, and I'm just wondering.
Heaven forbid, Commissioner. So we've got a scorecard in front of us, members, and we'll happily now take questions or observations on it. And Nikki.
Thank you, Chairman. I've read through this scorecard, and it's not the most user-friendly document to read through. Have you considered trying to put it into some other format that's more readable, because it jumps around and I think it gives rolling 12 months statistics, but I don't know. And also, I mean, I'm just looking at one here, and it goes from 12 months to June 2019, it gives a stat, and then the next stat is 12 months to March 2022. So what happened in 2020 and part of 21? I just think it needs reformatting and re-looking at. And my other question is, how is the baseline set? Because at the top it says baseline, and I just want to know how your baseline is actually set. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Hopwood, one of the challenges we've got, this is one of the things that's most important for you as panel to compare and to look at, is the front page where it shows what we reported at last panel and what's been reported at this panel to see what's changed, because every bit of data that is in there is blooming different. And it's all about when it gets published, it's all about when it's available. So it's really unhelpful to try and get a snapshot in time of where we're at with something. So just in terms of panel members, the best comparison we can do and put the marker and the line in the sand is the panel meeting. So the front page is probably your best option to get an overall picture of where we're at. And I appreciate it's busy. We can certainly look at, whether there's something you prefer to receive, but I do not want to spend a lot of time going through process of production and presentation when the information is there, and I do hope that as you get used to looking at it, because it does take a little while to just get used to looking at how it's all laid out and what's there, is that the front page showing you that marker in the sand of a panel meeting is a really, really helpful one, because it puts a moment in time, and then we're at least comparing like with like to a certain degree, even though some of the time frames are different inside. It gives a marker in the stand. So I think that's the only way I'm trying to be transparent about how to show improvement or not improvement in those measures. The baseline was chosen for pre-COVID year, so that we weren't using a COVID year where crime reduced dramatically. So we used a baseline for a pre-COVID year to make sure that it's an actual reflection of what crime was like. And I'm going to just hand over to Felicity and my team, who can give you some of the technical challenges around the data, just for members' understanding, because we're not trying to be difficult and we're not trying to be awkward with trying to present you this information. It is just a challenge generally, but I'll hand over to Felicity.
Thank you, Commissioner. And yes, I'd echo that not trying to be difficult. Unfortunately, we're faced with rather a difficult set of data. The reason that we have a baseline leading up to the date of in June 2019, as the Commissioner has said, is that comparing to the years of 2020 and 2021 gives a relatively false sense of what crime looked like, predominantly because the majority of people were staying at home, and therefore there was less opportunity to become victim for crime. The data sets that run 12 months to June 2019 is based on the recording cycles of the Office of National Statistics. So they work in that 12-month period up to the June, and that gives us data sets that we can compare to national comparators. So that's why we've used that as the baseline. You've correctly identified that some of those have a slightly different period. Those are where we're not able to use Office of National Statistics data and have to use the most relevant comparative data set that we're able to do, and we do our best to keep those as close as possible to that 12 months to June 2019. But an example of that, for example, would be the levels of public confidence in the police, which actually is based on a particular survey that's run at a set time, so we have to compare to the closest that we've got. We completely appreciate that this is a scorecard with a lot of colours, a lot of symbols, and I would be very pleased to have feedback from anybody who has recommendations for how we can make this more user-friendly, and be very delighted to meet with anyone to have those conversations after this meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Felicity. Members, we've been through this performance more ways than one, scorecards, many times over the years. I suppose from day one, which was about, I can't remember, 8 years ago, something like that, when we formed the panel, we seemed to go through this sort of year after year after year. And your questions are very valid, Nikki. I was going to call you Councillor Barnes then, for some reason. I would suggest that maybe, and it's just suggestion, that we perhaps, we can't go through this line by line today, or at probably any meeting. I would suggest perhaps a bit of a teaching on how this was derived, the background to it, how the positions are set, and perhaps a workshop on Teams or something for an hour during the next couple of months or something, just in order to sort of like get this thing out in the open again. Again, it's going to come back, but I mean, I personally have been looking at this now for the last, as I said, 8 or 9 years, and we've always got a question on it. So perhaps a workshop, and members might like to dial into it at some stage. Perhaps you can set that one up. Is that possible, Fran? Thanks very much. I have...
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to go back to my previous question that I snuck in earlier. So in terms of hate crime, obviously it's disappointing to see that in Devon and Cornwall, it's disappointing, probably no surprise to me actually, really, that it's increased. And obviously with the national trend, it's up 12% to 120,000. So what is your strategy going to be on this one, Commissioner?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, when you look at the trend line on hate crime, it's the only thing that's continued to increase all the way through COVID and since. I mean, the bit for us, I think there's a few things which I think would be helpful to actually share with panel, and we could do that outside of the meeting if that's helpful. But there is a real issue about when there is a national conversation, whether it's about race, sexuality, when there's a national conversation about it, it seems to have a spike and an increase. So this is why language and how we try and talk about some of these subjects nationally really do matter. I would love to share that slide with you outside of this meeting, which shows you every time there's been a national conversation or legislation or something that's come up, it shows that there's been an increase on that particularly affected group. So I think that would be really helpful for your knowledge. I would like to thank you for your efforts in Torbay with your recently I've actually got a copy of it here. I know it's still only draft at the moment, and I would welcome some to comment on all of that before it's totally finalised. But your racism review that you've done in Torbay, really welcome that, as we have with the Vaughan Commission in Plymouth. You know, so our panel is sort of leading in these areas, trying to tackle some of the tricky issues, we obviously need to look at what the recommendations are in there, and I will do a formal response to you on that in particular. But we have got some general challenges in policing, so the whole culture and conversation around race has been a difficult one. The disparity in stop and search has been a national conversation that has not been resolved. There is a lack of clarity about why that disparity. There is a lack of understanding still about the use of stop and search and how some of that works and the use of force. And I appreciate your racism review actually did look at some of those and checked on my scrutiny findings to see that we still have work to do in scrutinising some of the policing. Nationally, as a police force, I'm focusing specifically on race here because race has increased hate crime and sexuality hate crime has increased as well, sexual orientation. So those are the two particular ones that seem to have been going along with some of the national conversation. But the National Police Chiefs Council have produced a race and inclusion action plan that has landed with the force. We are actually at this moment in time in the process, when I say we, actually the force, not my office, is in the process of recruiting a non-executive director for the police who will have race and inclusion as a portfolio. That's been advertised through the Home Office, so we may well get a national individual who is interested in helping us, or we may get a local individual, but there has been an effort to look at how we can involve and improve those conversations in Devon and Cornwall Police. And the appointment of a non-executive director at the executive level is quite a radical shift. And it's partly as well because we are underrepresenting people from ethnic minorities in policing. You know, we have one of the worst forces for being able to actually match what your community level is compared to what you are in the force. So I think that's a huge step forward for policing in Devon and Cornwall to actually be able to have someone with a bit more of a specialism, with a bit of a focus on it at the most senior level. They will sit with the Assistant Chief Constables, Deputy Chief Constable and Chief Constable. I hope that's a little reassuring for you because as far as I'm aware, we're the only force in the country that's done that or is doing that. So just to let you know. The other bit though is I do need to do more scrutiny on hate crime in particular. When I ask the police to explain it, obviously there's the national conversation bit that they can explain to me when that comes about. There does seem to be a spike in it. But actually how they're tackling it, or whether that's effective, and in trying to reduce it, I need to do more scrutiny on. So I do commit today to actually do a piece of scrutiny in particular on how the police's response to hate crime is happening.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Pemberton, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Quickly, if I can, pick up on something Councillor Hopwood said, then I want to sort of continue this discussion around some minority communities and hate crime and broader issues. In terms of the scorecard, it's slightly disappointing that 8 of the 30 indicators have no trend status assigned. That should be an exception, not over 20%. So when we come to have a discussion on that, it would be good to talk about why not and what you can do to improve that. So that was just picking up on the whole how this is presented issue. I wanted to talk a little about the importance of community engagement. I think it's disappointing that the Censia report on how minority communities feel about police engagement with them in Devon and Cornwall has still not been released, especially as a decision has been made to remove the community engagement people who have built trust with communities, and that trust really matters. Now, the reason I'm raising that is I've had people from black and other minority communities, from faith communities, from disability and learning disability and mental health communities, and from LGBTQ+ communities raise it with me over the last month. And that is distressing that so many different protected characteristics have come to me because I've said I'm going to be scrutinising equalities and diversity in the city as chair of a scrutiny panel, to say that they are concerned about the police, because that doesn't bode well. I think it's important that everyone within any organisation takes responsibility for equalities, diversity, inclusion and engagement. However, if it's everyone's responsibility and no one takes a lead, it becomes reactionary, it becomes dependent on people contacting you, not you contacting others, and there has no planned approach to how all of those minority communities across all of Devon and Cornwall will be engaged with. At a point where hate crime is rising, and you have identified that's national conversations, but also specific communities, it's a time for you to be doing, as you talked about in your last report, how important community engagement was, for you to be making sure that you do more, not less. And actually your plans appear to become ad hoc and reactionary rather than programmed. I am really concerned about all of that. Obviously, I'm concerned about the fact that at national level, misogyny has not been put forward as a hate crime when we have so much violence against women and girls, and I think that should be included, personally. And I know that's beyond your remit, though I hope you would argue for it. But your answer to how hate crime would be responded to by the force, at a point while the only hate crime specialist bit within all of Devon and Cornwall, I understand in Plymouth, is being withdrawn. So you're putting no specialist stuff within the police and no specialist engagement within your office. Just seems to me that hate crime reporting will happen, but how hate crime is being dealt with will fall, how trust will happen will fall, and surely reporting is great, but if reporting is going up and no one's doing anything about the reports, we don't know from this. I think this is really ripe for stuff. We will be looking at it because it's in the Equalities and Action, Diversity Action Plan in Plymouth that scrutiny has been asked to look at that from the Crime and Disorder panel, as well as broader scrutiny. But at the moment, it seems to me that the actions of the police and the OPCC are minimising the importance to minority communities in your eyes, or in their eyes, about how you view them. And that isn't good. And I don't like receiving multiple representations, all putting in very different perspectives. It's not a standard letter, but people choosing to respond to me. I don't think your answer just now was good enough. I don't think the actions that we're hearing are being taken are good enough. And I think we need better, and minority communities across Devon and Cornwall deserve better. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose, firstly, I should state, with the help of this panel, hate crime is a mission-critical indicator, a strategic indicator in the police and crime plan. It wasn't there before. We have put it in as a collective, as a mission-critical strategic indicator, so that we do monitor it transparently and publicly to make sure that we are taking the action that's required. And I thank the panel for that, particularly Councillor Atiya Allah, who proposed that we include it. And I think that that's absolutely the right thing to do. Obviously, community cohesion is what I'm interested in trying to resolve, because that's the challenge when it comes to hate crime. But there's a few things that I just need to check with you in terms of those particular communities or individuals you've spoken to, Councillor Penberthy. Please, I would be more than happy to have a private audience with those individuals, either collectively, individually. I'm happy to go to them. I'm happy to visit their homes. I do want to hear from people who are having bad experiences in their communities because of who they are. So I do want to hear from them directly. There's a couple of things in terms of, you mentioned misogyny. So we do record in Devon and Cornwall Police misogyny as a hate crime, regardless of the Home Office deciding to include it. It already is included in Devon and Cornwall. It's something that was introduced a number of years ago now, and it is used as an aggravating factor when someone has been a victim of crime if they believe that misogyny is the cause. So it's already recorded here. We're ahead of the game. There's only a few forces that do this, but this is about trying to establish, is there an underlying trend in our community around the hatred of women? So that has been in place for a few years. I don't think maybe all members may be aware of that. Just in terms of community engagement that you speak about, the police have not withdrawn any efforts around dealing with hate crime in Plymouth. I think it's my office you may be talking about in terms of our community engagement workers specifically. But the problem we've got at the moment is we are wholly dependent on a very small team trying to cover the whole of Devon and Cornwall, and I'm not getting the voices of people from across the whole patch. So I'm just going to hand over to my chief exec, who is responsible for delivering on community engagement for me, to explain to you why we're having a step change in how that works.
Thank you, Chair. We are reorganising the way that we deliver a broad range of community engagement and communications and engagement activity across the entire office. And it's not to reduce the amount that we're doing, although it's true that there are a number of staff that are involved in a process, but it would be inappropriate to talk about individuals at this particular meeting. But we are moving very much back to sharing the community and engagement responsibilities right across all the staff in the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. So we do community engagement in a variety of ways. So some of that is on a one-to-one basis with individual communities, some of that is attending events, some of that is through social media and the website, through the Councillor Advocate Scheme. And you will have seen in the report later on that's coming from the annual reports a bit of a dip sample of some of the things that we do. So the majority of the community engagement that we deliver in the office is not vested in one or two individuals. It is, and will continue to be, a much wider perspective. And that includes the Commissioner herself in terms of the engagement that she does right across Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. You may also be interested to know that Devon and Cornwall APCC is the national lead for communications and engagement for APCCs. Myself and our head of comms, Patrick, who's sat behind me, co-chair a national collaboration board on behalf of all Police and Crime Commissioners' offices. And we are doing significantly more in comms and engagement than pretty much any other office as it currently stands. That's not to say we can't always do more, because yes, of course we can. But we have an approach that we've learned a lot from over the last few years. We've learned a lot of lessons during COVID about what works with communities and what doesn't. But as the Commissioner has said, if there are communities that have a particular issue, then we would always be happy to speak with them. And of course, the force, as Commissioner has said, is not withdrawing any services and has its own arrangements for community engagement, and widely with things like citizens in policing about different ways of involving communities. So this needs to be considered in the round rather than just a particular approach that there are a number of people involved within the office at the moment.
Supplemental, if I may, Chair. I think it's easy for a set of people to sit down and work out how other people want to be engaged with. I'm listening to the voices of people you want to engage with who say they are unhappy because one of the key issues that they believe is about the established relationship with one of your team that means that they can trust them and that they can put people in touch. Now, I understand during COVID what then happened was those team members put people through to the office, which changed all your figures because they weren't able to go out and about. But that relationship and trust is what I'm being told it's really important that it's being stripped away. And you might be national leads, but if local people are saying it looks like you're trying to smash relationships and that's smashing trust, that isn't positive. So I'm just feeding back to you what I've received. I've heard what you've said. I will certainly talk to people and see how many of them are prepared to meet with you. But I'm feeding back what I am hearing from members of my own community, my own minority community, as well as those of others. And I am concerned to be hearing that. And I would like your assurance, given you said there are no changes in policing, that the specialist hate crime function and officer in Plymouth is not being withdrawn and has not been withdrawn, because that isn't what local community groups have been told. So if actually what local community groups have been told by local police is wrong, please can you give that assurance now?
I think we are drifting away
confirmed.
somewhat from the
Yeah.
scorecard.
Yeah,
but if you want to respond, Commissioner,
Well,
please do.
just in terms of, I will go back and confirm exactly the query about specialist hate crime within the force.
Thank you. Councillor Tayala.
I just wanted to, extend on from Councillor Pepperby. So my experiences with people in Torbay from a BME community, they don't trust the police. They, and when I speak to people that have experienced hate crime, I'm just giving you the personal account here from people. When I say to them, you need to go to the police to report it, a lot of people from the BME community don't want to go to the police because they don't trust the police, because they fear that they will be judged, wrongfully judged. So there does need to be, we do need to have a better representation, through the police force, through the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner. I'm more than happy, along with, and hopefully with Councillor Pepperby, that we get this sorted. That there is a specialist hate crime function for Plymouth, but also for Torbay as well. It is crucial. It is crucial, because otherwise, how are you going to get that engagement right at the end of the day? It's all very well me sending you emails going, I've had this person come towards me, can you deal with this? It gets lost in the system. We just need a dedicated function that people can go to within time. You've got to build that trust up with people. And that's one of the things that I found in the race review when we've also talked about policing. It's trust. A lot of people in the BME community don't trust the police, or sometimes they don't trust authority, full stop, even me as a councillor. Well, to a point. So that's just a bit of an insight there, and I hope that helps.
Thank you for that. I mean, that's an advisory thing. I think the subject is very important, but we have drifted away from the scorecard somewhat. I don't know if you need to respond to Councillor Attire, Commissioner, at all.
I wouldn't mind, Chairman, just in terms of, this is one of the fundamental reasons why we need more neighbourhood beat officers in our communities, building those trusting relationships. It's why we've put 40 in the council tax precept uplift this year. The operating model with all the new officers coming needs to be in the neighbourhood teams. And I think with a new chief constable that will be coming on the horizon, perhaps that's a particular one you might want to have a conversation with them about when you meet them, because it's certainly something I'm going to be really clear on through the recruitment process of my expectation on that, because you only build trust by being there.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Hopwood, Nikki.
Thank you, Chairman. I read at 6.2 the amount of funding that you've brought into Devon and Cornwall yourself personally in the year 21-22, and I have to say it's a phenomenal amount of money, and I take my hat off to you for securing that amount of money. I mean, it's I don't know what the percentage terms of the uplift from what I now know is your baseline is, but to bring in that amount of extra funding into this force is really to be commended, and I would hope that with that additional amount of money going into the years sort of 22-23, that will start to see benefits with bringing crime down. So now you've had the money to do something with it. So I'm hoping that when we look at the figures next year, that money will have gone a long way to bring the figures down. So we should, in my view, be seeing a decrease in a lot of crime figures next year, because you'll have brought the money in yourself to deal with it. So I just think we're very good at criticising, but I think, you know, credit where credit's due. To bring that amount of money in is phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thanks, Chairman. One of the biggest things that we can do, and obviously with our summer policing challenge, is we're always trying to find extra resources and try and fight for those. These particular ones, I have to say a huge thanks to my team, who've really fought hard to get this money in for dealing with perpetrators of domestic violence, which we've never had before, the funding to support that, and to really make a difference to victims that are being affected. What's really key is the Safer Streets money, because that's the preventative side. You know, better CCTV, street lighting, creating an environment where it's difficult and more hostile to create crime. And I'm looking forward to hearing this week, although who knows with what's happening with government at the moment, the results of the next round of Safer Streets funding, which I'm hoping will get over another £1 million. So we've got one specifically for Torbay. We've got some money bidding going for Exeter. I'm just really excited that we may well be able to get even more in to help prevent crime in our community. So thank you for acknowledging that, Councillor Hopwood.
Well, even get some money for Cornwall, you never know. Okay, members. So I think we'll bring this to a close and finish on a positive note.
Chair, I've been waving
Alistair,
my arms.
yes.
Thank you. There was a number of things I wanted to speak about. One was the business about the money coming in. I think it is to the credit of the Commissioner that she has brought this big increase in money. But then, in fairness, we're all doing that because that is the way government funding seems to be working these days. And I don't personally think that's the right way to fund. I think we should all be properly funded from the outset, not have to go to some kind of competition to see who wins. All credit to the Commissioner for winning, but in terms of that, I don't think it's a good thing for the future. In terms of the baseline, I think this is something of a misnomer, in the sense that most people, I think in terms of the baseline of the times when effectively austerity started to come in terms of the police, and we started to lose officers, and albeit that we do need to be able to just look back and see what's happened against last year, or in this particular special interest a couple of years, because the pandemic years have been not the norm, I do think it would be really useful to see how that those figures actually are represented across the longer term, so that we go back to the days when you actually saw police officers on the beat and that type of thing. And then in terms of what we've been talking about, sort of mostly about the hate crime, but there's also the increase in violent crime, the increase in youth crime, the percentage of satisfied victims. Still 25% of victims were unsatisfied. The levels of public confidence, still a worrying level, a number of people who are not confident in the police. And then I look at the issues like the drugs issue, and I think, well, clearly the Commissioner's report is talking a lot about the huge emphasis that has gone on drugs, and that is right and proper. So it does show that when emphasis is put on these things, then work can can improve. And I would just like to say, I want to see life better. I want to see it better for minorities. I want to see it better for young people. I want to see it better for the victims of crime. And my guess is that that means we need more funding from central government for this really vital thing for our society. Thank you.
Don't think anyone could argue with that. Commissioner, do you want to just respond? I don't think there was a question there. It was an observation.
Just some reflections, Chairman. Councillor Dewhurst makes some very good points. And I think in terms of it shows that the scorecard's working, because at a glance you can see all those things. And that's what we're trying to put before you, is the transparency side of things. A baseline to me is the start of my term of office. I want to see that I've improved things over the term of my office. And my baseline personally is the term of my office. But this is to help us get through a proper measuring crime, really, is why we've chosen that specific baseline. The extra funding, though, I will say, it's a bit like in the police and crime plan. I've got 4 priority areas. The government has priority areas and policy areas, and all I try and do is, when they put their funding towards their priorities, I'm trying to drag it down into Devon and Cornwall. And I think that's, so what it's not for day-to-day policing, it's for really trying to tackle crime, deal with offenders, and actually support victims better. I would say there's a lot more effort needed on dealing with offenders, and the perpetrator funding is the only thing we've really had for the first time ever to tackle perpetrators of domestic abuse. And bearing in mind violent crime is on the increase, and we know a lot of that is in relation to domestic abuse, we want to see more effort made to stop people committing those crimes. So we're getting there, but yeah, they are policy areas rather than day-to-day funding for policing that I'm getting through for that funding side of things. I would like to see exactly the same as you described, a better community for all, for our young people, for people from minority ethnic backgrounds, for people who are suffering from particular crime types, which women do more than men. We do want to see this better, and I really do hope, especially once we've had a teach-in on the performance scorecard, you'll be able to really see that at a glance so that you can ensure that you scrutinise me well. And I suppose in terms of some of these issues, your job is to scrutinise me and my actions, and am I doing enough? And I do hear from you today that there are some areas that you think I am not doing enough. So I do accept that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Right, okay, members. This is item 8. So with the recommendation that we hold a workshop conducted on Teams sometime in the near-ish future. I hope members will agree with that. I will ask you to note the report, members. Thank you. Now, I'm 25 minutes behind a self-imposed time, so moving on to item 9, not that I'm trying to rush anybody, but moving on to item 9, which is the road safety profile, pages 39 to 46 in your bundle, members. So back to the Commissioner, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to flag, you will get one of these reports on each of the priority areas in the police and crime plan, so that you will get a bit more of a rounded picture of what's happening in that priority area. So you will get one for drugs, one for antisocial behaviour, and one for serious violence as well. This is the first one. So again, it's reflections on how useful this is for you as a panel to see. I know you're all committed to tackling road safety in your areas. It's one of the biggest things our community is concerned about. I would like to particularly flag, though, just for your awareness, is we've got a really serious issue with bikers at the moment. Deaths of bikers has gone through the roof. It is absolutely tragic that we've had 23 motorcyclists killed in this year alone. You know, if you think our annual road deaths is around, our baseline is 58 a year, our baseline that we measure at Vision Zero. We're at 23 just with bikers so far this year. So it's really quite frightening. There has been quite a campaign by the police to put messaging out with partners, the fire service, everyone trying to help on here. But speed is an issue. This is why I will never apologise for having speed cameras in our communities, community speed watch in our streets, because bikers at the end of the day, I'm not victim blaming here, I'm being frank about some of the challenges is that there is people who are riding their bikes, riding too fast and not being as safe on them as they could be. And often it's because they're a bit rusty, haven't been out for a while. We've got some real challenges about how we help bikers be safer. But I just really wanted to flag that to you. If there's anything you can do to push out some of the communications that the police put out over the last few weeks on this would be most welcome. Or any ideas that you might have, you can push through Vision Zero. We're more than happy to have a project from someone who wants to do something in relation to this more than we're already doing. But just particularly wanted to flag that to you as a bit of news. But other than that, I'll leave the report as it is.
No, very, very important point. I've been noting the biker deaths over the last 6 to 8 months, and pretty horrendous, I must admit. Members, any questions? Chris?
Thank you, Chair. And I'd just like to pick up on the issue of bikers and maybe go from there slightly further. But an area that I know I'm getting numerous complaints all the time about is bike noise, which isn't necessarily bike speed, but because people are removing or loosening baffles. Now, my reckoning is if people are removing or loosening baffles, they're probably doing other things to their bikes that make them illegal. When I've raised it locally, I've been told, oh, it's an antisocial behaviour issue that needs a multi-agency approach, and then no one takes ownership of it, because actually it's a moving vehicle offence. Because the bike is only noisy when it's moving, or if it's idling at a traffic light. We're getting complaints, literally, it stops at 4 o'clock in the morning and it starts again at 6. So actually it doesn't really stop. And I've got pensioners saying that they're not getting good night's sleep, and children going tired to school. And that isn't good enough. Now, I know the government have talked about putting 5 noise cameras out, which seems to be rather pathetic for a whole country. And I've asked the leader of the council, and he said, oh, he would back our MP's call to have one around the centre of Plymouth. But I wonder whether there is stuff that could be done around some of these noise hotspots that then link the findings back to the local authorities for trading standards, so that garages can be penalised if they're MOTing vehicles that are over the noise limits. And although it's bikes, it's also cars. And I hasten to say that it's increasingly not young people. It's people who've passed tests and can afford bigger bikes and flasher cars who are making them noisier in the process. And some of those are pensioners. So this is no longer a youth thing, although young people do like their noisy mopeds. Actually, it's something that's going wider. My worry is that at the moment it's bikes that are doing it, but we're seeing increasing numbers of cars that are having that done to their exhaust. So what might that do for car safety as well? So could we actually do something very positive about trying to ramp up that whole thing? I know the government's piloting, but could we do stuff on noise cameras? The leader of the council said that he'd be happy to do something. If we could do it all together, that would be fantastic. But then can we start looking at what it means for those cars that are souped up as well? Because my worry is that we'll go from bike deaths to car deaths in souped up cars, and we must have a whole load of garages allowing this to happen. And so I just wanted to pick that up, because if I didn't at every opportunity, I'm going to have people yelling at me that I'm not doing the right thing. But I know that it's not good for local people to have that noise. And if it's happening around the Barbican in Plymouth, my guess it's happening around other seafronts and in market towns where people are gathering. And it isn't just at night, it is all day. So please, anything you can do to support that sort of innovation, that we could actually tackle people, do more upper alloys and those sorts of things, would be really welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Obviously a good point, but I don't really know where I would start with a noise camera, to be quite honest.
If I may, Chairman, antisocial behaviours, why it's one of the priorities in the police and crime plan, are the things that actually affect people's quality of life day in and day out and day in and day out. I've even got a bike round my way at 3 o'clock in the morning. Where I live, you can hear it. It must be driving for miles and I can still hear it. I know that some people are really acutely affected by this, both via cars and bikes. I think in terms of the fact that we've got antisocial behaviour as a priority in the plan, and I know many members have talked to me before specifically about car vehicle noise, I'd be more than happy to have a look at that under the heading of antisocial behaviour, about what, because it's one of those ones where I'm sure they ring the council who say it's a police issue, the police say it's a council issue, and this is the whole issue with antisocial behaviour. Nobody takes responsibility for it overall. So I'm more than happy to, outside of this meeting, see what we can do to actually progress some better understanding of this specific issue, where it's happening, what's going on. I know we've got some really great efforts by policing in the car industry side of things with Sergeant Owen how dare I call him a PC, you'd be disappointed. Sergeant Owen Messenger, who some of you may have seen his TikToks. He works with George's Car Media. We've just agreed through Vision Zero partnership, we're going to buy him an RS turbo vehicle to actually custom kit it up to show people how to do it professionally and properly. He's got a huge following. Millions of people have seen what he does as a police officer with George's Car Media. So we've got the car side a little bit sorted. We haven't quite got there, I don't think, on the bike. So more than happy, I think, to see how we can have a look at that.
So I know that a lot of my residents would be very happy, and I'm happy to offer up the waterfront loop that goes from the Barbican through the Hoe Mill Bay and down to Devil's Point and back along Union Street and Royal Parade as a sample ground, because it's probably pretty symptomatic of lots of other places. And if we can crack it here, we can probably crack it in other places too.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Dewhurst. Alistair.
Thanks, Roger. So I must admit, I didn't know there was such a thing as a noise camera, and I've written it down in capital letters, and I shall be firing off an email later on. I was particularly taken by the chart showing KSIs under the section crime types, risks and challenges. It doesn't have a page number because it lists what you might call perpetrators and also victims, because clearly pedestrians and cyclists are victims in this, and although the KSIs have gone down recently, the 10-year trend is still going up, and that's really, really concerning. Adding to what was said just now, the large motorcycle, which I guess is owned by more mature people, that's the really, really frightening 122 casualties in 2020. 122 casualties in 2020. And I agree about the noise issue. I also, 3 o'clock in the morning, I hear motorbikes charging down the A381, and I know that I constantly have complaints from residents who live near the A380 South Devon Highway. You can hear them revving up from miles and miles away. So I think that's a real concern. What I would say is that at scrutiny at Devon County the other day, we agreed to ask Devon County's Cabinet to bring in a request for us to take responsibility for moving traffic offences with our big camera arrays around the county, and I'll be asking about noise cameras there, because I was gobsmacked at the number of cameras that there are, and I think that's really something adjunct to the police, but where we can all work together, and that's surely got to be for the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Commissioner.
Thanks, Chairman. Just a couple of bits. I know you flagged the large motorcycle 122. Just be really clear that this is killed and seriously injured. So that's not 122 deaths, it is casualties overall. And I need to correct what I said earlier because it's 23 motorcyclists have been killed or seriously injured. So it's 10 who have died this year alone. So I just want to correct that for the record. I do apologise. I've also read it as one whole thing and realised in just checking it out now that it is killed and seriously injured. Although, don't get me wrong, seriously injured, some people would probably prefer to be dead. That's how badly injured they are, who have no quality of life after such a terrible collision. I thought it'd be also useful to just highlight that Torbay obviously has quite a high pedestrian rate of deaths, and I'm sort of pleading to Councillor Atia Allah to ensure that Torbay Council fully involves itself in the Vision Zero partnership, as we have had the least engagement from Torbay than any other local authority, and there's an opportunity to help us support you better and look for investment opportunities through that Vision Zero partnership. So I just wanted to flag that one in particular, because I know that you'll go back right now and have a chat about that. But well, I'm glad you found this useful. I'm really pleased that it might spur some energy and effort around these areas. And again, there are opportunities through that Vision Zero partnership, that moving traffic offence camera and an idea that you've been looking at, Councillor Dewhurst, for Devon. We would really like to try and understand how we can utilise that as a whole across Devon and Cornwall. We are trying to get consistency of how we're dealing with this to make sure we meet that target of reducing those road deaths. At the moment, we feel like we're doing more at the moment, but I don't feel we're reaching that target. As you said, the trend is still in the wrong direction. We may have had a few less deaths per year, but that's not dramatic enough to make sure that we're trying to get to zero. So we do know that we need some radical ideas to actually make this step change. So, yeah, thank you for reading through it and understanding it, Councillor Dewhurst, and reflecting back what your concerns are.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor.
Thank you. Well, I'm a biker, so I'm quite keen on this subject. And the biggest problem is, of course, everyone's driving too fast. And if you're on a bike, even if it's not your fault, you are very vulnerable if you get hit by a vehicle. And you don't have to be going very fast, actually, to be very badly injured. And I live on a lane, in Cornwall, not far from a school. The speed goes from 60, and then it goes down to 30, and then it goes down to 20 because there's a school. Nobody takes any notice. They go past my place where they should be doing no more than 30 at about 50 miles an hour frequently. I can hear them coming and changing gear. This is the problem. Everyone's driving too fast in the wrong places. Modern cars are very quiet. They're easy to drive. They've got ABS braking systems. People in cars are fairly well protected. People on bikes are not well protected. And that's one of the first problems. Bikes are getting bigger and faster all the time, and people are less experienced. The people who are riding them quite often are less experienced. So that is a problem. The solution is to get everyone to come down to speed on their speeds. And this is why I was so keen on this 20 Plenty speed campaign. But it seems to be taking forever to get accepted and into the system, so to speak. And it could have a dramatic effect on accidents generally, including pedestrians and everything else. It could have a dramatic effect. And when people see the difference between driving at 20 and driving at 40, for instance, and see the difference in accidents, injuries, and deaths, it has to be brought home to them. This is so important, and it is the only way we're going to get people to understand this is what we're going to have to do. And that's what I would like to see. It's not just motorbikes, because they are unfortunately quite often victims of something. All right, okay, they go past me when I'm in a car. Motorbikes go past me like I'm standing still, and I think, well, if he falls off, I'm not stopping when I go past him. Anyway, but that's another matter. But the fact of the matter is, everyone is driving too fast in the wrong places. And on a bike, I say you're particularly vulnerable. But the 20 Plenty scheme could be a big impact on all of this, because you can make people aware of how vulnerable you are when you're at speed and injured, or how you injure someone. And I'd like to see the 20 scheme get a lot more profile and get rolled out much quicker than it is at the moment.
Thank you. A fair point. We do need to move on. You want to make a comment, Commissioner? I think he's made a very good point.
Chairman, just to say, obviously the 20 is plenty scheme is a council policy that Cornwall have absolutely led on. The whole of Cornwall, they've said where their communities want a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, they will support those communities to have that. And we've worked with the community speed watch schemes and the speed detection officers that, again, we've got more speed detection officers who will enforce in a 20-mile-an-hour zone. So just to say it's on our agenda, but the speed, I've not got a Vision Zero partnership. I know, Chairman, you're on the partnership. Haven't got a meeting now till September. So perhaps I may need to have some conversations in the meantime just to see where things are at. We have a new coordinator for the Vision Zero partnership, who is a lady from Cornwall Council, Natalie Waugh, who has been leading across trying to improve how we do things across Devon and Cornwall. So I hope it gives you some assurance that we've got some infrastructure there to try and help Cornwall Council implement their schemes as quickly as possible. But I will go back and ask about that specific query. But obviously it's not my responsibility, the 20, but Cornwall Council have a really clear policy on that.
Yeah, I think Devon are moving that way as well by implementing community-led 20-mile-an-hour schemes. Councillor Samuel, Lois.
Yeah, I'll use that one. Just one quick question about the call for ideas. I think it's really positive that amounts of money are given to the community. How are these projects monitored, and will we see how the effects that funding's gone?
We could actually publish with you what gets funded through those schemes as part of the panel paperwork at a future meeting, if that's helpful.
Yep, good, thank you. There are no further questions, members, so the panel is asked to note the report. Thank you. Item 10, draft annual report. So we need to make a decision on this at some stage, I suppose, but I'm going to hand it. That's on pages 47 to 74, so it's quite weighty, members. So I'm going to hand back and over to Commissioner again. Well in the spotlight, Commissioner.
Chairman, thank you. As members will be aware, I must submit, and as part of the legal requirement and duty of my office, an annual report. We bring a draft to you as members to enable you to actually scrutinise it a little bit and also influence it. I do make changes following panel's comments when you've seen the draft report, but it does give you a highlight of the types of workings of my office and what they're doing on a regular basis. I think there's a few things in particular that's worth noting. We have got a particularly, I think, challenging year ahead of us, and this is now a reflection of everything that we've just done in the past year. And of course it's now July, so this relates to April to March last year, April the year before to March last year, to this year, sorry, apologies. A couple of things in there that are really key. I think the serious violence programme, thank you to members supporting me for the council tax increase to create the serious violence partnership that we use with that council tax uplift. We were, I believe, the first in the country to set up such a thing that had no funding from government because other areas got violence reduction unit funding and we didn't qualify. It's good that we didn't qualify because it meant we had less, if you like, injuries with a bladed weapon in hospital admissions, which is what the measure was. Great that we haven't got that many admissions, but we know we've got a violence problem that needs to be solved. So we're really pleased that we're steps ahead now in terms of how we're trying to push forward on serious violence. local authorities, as members will know, have got a serious violence duty. That is your responsibility for working together as a collaborative to try and tackle violence. And I have had extremely well-supported local authority for the Serious Violence Partnership and how we will help to deliver on that duty. So we will be using some of the research and needs assessment that we've done, the fact that we're focusing on 0 to 25-year-olds as how we're trying to tackle in the long term our serious violence challenges. And we launched our 10 hallmarks of a strong partnership and got local authorities to sign up to that. And I just want to thank members that it's been really, really helpful and supportive and definitely collaborative in trying to tackle this difficult problem. The other bit to just highlight, as you also know, we were the only office outside of the Mayor's Office for London that set up a 10-year strategic contract with victim support to actually oversee in the long term how our victims are better supported. And I just want to flag, it's been a first year that we've had that in place, and it's been really successful in the sense that I think particularly when we had the Kiam incident, we were able to be with victim support on the ground literally the next day. They were pushing out communications to ask people to come forward and if they needed any help online straight away as soon as the incident occurred. And we've had really great support from them in terms of our communities that they've needed to help recover from that terrible tragedy. So I think that we're really pleased that we had that in place, and victim support is bringing really great value to support all of our littler, smaller organisations that are there to help victims, to give them some capacity and guidance so that we've got some consistency for our victims. And then finally, just to highlight in particular, I do have to report on the independent custody visiting scheme as part of my duties. And, you know, just to highlight that to you, we've got some amazing people who go out different times of the day or night as a lay person, who enter custody suites, who check that the detainees have had their rights given to them, that they're being looked after well. They also chat with the detention officers and the custody sergeant and understand what's going on in custody at the moment. And they are my eyes and ears of giving me assurance that the police are dealing with people well. And they do hundreds of hours a year to go and do that for me across the whole of Devon, Cornwall and the Isles of, well, not the Isles of Scilly, because we don't have a custody suite in the Isles of Scilly. But as you can see, by the end of March, we had 16 independent custody visitors, and they carried out 175 visits and saw almost 500 detainees over that period of time, checking on their welfare. And I just want to thank those volunteers. It's been an absolute groundbreaking fact that we're able to do that, and it's done completely with volunteers, not with paid staff. So just wanted to highlight that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I must say that I think reading through this the other day, I was actually quite impressed with it, which I think they seem to get better and better. Very good. Any questions, members? Chris, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just harking back to some of our previous discussions, hate crime is only mentioned as 2 words on page 24 of the report, which is page 59 of our pack. I think we should actually be reflecting some of those things more. Now, it might not be possible this year, but by next year, please can that, and also the whole area of violence against women and girls, especially male violence against women and girls, have a higher priority in the report. But it's a good report, there's lots in it, but I think those are 2 areas that we've talked about today that I think matter in our communities that should be reflected in your report.
Well, it is a draft report. Commissioner, you want to say something? Or do you...
Just going to say, absolutely support that, Chairman. Probably should have a separate page for each, because they are almost 2 of the main strategic indicators in the plan, really, that have the biggest, farthest way to go. It's probably the best way to describe that.
Okay, well noted. It's carrying, I think the report is carrying most of the important ASB, road safety, violence, that sort of thing. So members, if there are no immediate questions, what I would like to, we need to note this report formally. During the next week or so, can you if you've got any questions or queries at all, or you think some things need to be changed, etc. I'm not saying they will, but please come back to Ross once you've had chance to bring it in. Yes, Chris, sorry.
As well as noting it, given the Commissioner's happiness, could we recommend that sections on hate crime and violence against women and girls are added to this report?
We can recommend, absolutely, certainly.
Thank you.
Whether we're in a stage where we can't change it, I don't know, but don't make a decision yet. Please come back, and I think Ross has got a note of your point there, Chris. So if you want to nail it a bit further, just drop him an email or something. So if you've got any remarks on the report, then please come back. Okay, thanks very much. We need to move on a little bit, I think. Running a little bit late, even though it's self-imposed lateness. So the panel then, apart from that, is asked to note the report. Thank you. We move then to item 11, which is complaints against the Police and Crime Commissioner. And can I hand over to Fran Hughes?
Thank you, Chair. Very straightforward. There was one complaint in the reporting period, which, as Chair, you dealt with and in conjunction with myself under delegated powers. So there are no ongoing issues.
Sorry. We did deal with it. Thank you, Ross. Knocking over my coffee. Again, panel is asked to note the report. Thanks very much. Going on now to the last item on the agenda, item 12, the work programme. Ross, did you want to say any words on this?
Well, I think, Chair, there's been quite a lot of information available to members today. It seems sensible that members might have some additions to the work programme now. But of course, we can pick those up outside of the meeting as well. But Councillor Atiala.
I certainly would like to see hate crime and violence, I think it was against girls and women, certainly added to the work programme, because I think it's been quite prevalent in today's session. I mean, the Commissioner has admitted more work needs to be done, and I think it's worthwhile that this panel certainly highlights the issue and addresses the issue, and we work together to resolve. Thank you.
Okay, we've added that. There are a number of agenda items to be scheduled. They're not in any priority order here. So what I would like to do, and probably not today, but at least over the next sort of few weeks before the next panel meeting, is to put these in some sort of order. At the moment, you've got Neighbourhood Watch, you've got firearms licensing, both very laudable. Police legitimacy, whatever that means, recruitment plan. So there's a number of issues here, but I think we do need to put some prioritisation on it, and we'll certainly add hate crime into this mix as well. And so I think during the next sort of few weeks, we need to actually put some sort of priority on these things, rather than having a great big long wish list.
Through you, Chair, we'll also need to factor in the confirmation of appointment of a new Chief Constable at some point. So we'll ensure that that's added onto that list.
Absolutely. Fran.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to remind the panel that we'd had some offline discussions previously, and because we're appointing the Chief Constable, and this panel has a role in that, that will be the predominant item for September's meeting. But if you recall, we also had a conversation under the umbrella of what we would refer to as police legitimacy, with an offer from the independent Office of Police Complaints to come and give a presentation to you to explain more about the police complaints processes, and they've kindly offered to attend in September if that's acceptable to the panel.
Okay, we'll make a note of that. Thanks for that. Is there anything else that we need to discuss today? Anyone got any hot and burning topics? If not, I would like to thank the Commissioner, Fran, Felicity, Pierre at the back there, and members of the panel. Ross, thank you. And Vivian, thanks for being the Vice Chair. So, and I think we've got some lunch somewhere. Out on the landing, apparently. So, nothing further. I'd just like to bring the meeting to a close at 12:30. Smack on, actually. Thanks very much.